What's up YouTube? Welcome back to Jackal Gold Games, and in this video I'm going to be doing a review for Dynasty Warriors Origins on the PS5. So I did a pickups video for this game in March, I think it was late March, and this is the only game I've been playing non-stop for this year for the rest of March, April, May, and a good amount of June. Now unless something changes, depending on these other games coming out later this year, like Gears of War E-Day and Dynasty Warriors 3 Remastered, this is easily, in my opinion, the best game on the PS5, the best game in the entire ninth generation, hands down. Best thing I've played this entire generation, in my opinion. So, I'm a big fan of the Dynasty Warriors games. I started with Dynasty Warriors 3 back in the day, and then started playing the game since then, so I've always been a fan of this series. And this game is another departure for the series where they take it in a different direction. This one's insanely different, as you're playing as basically like it's a character named Ziluan, but you could name him. He's a member from the Guardians of Peace. It's these group of people that try to keep the land in peace, and there's something that happens to him. And you're playing as him as he follows the traditional Three Kingdoms storyline you know of from the Dynasty Warriors games. And one of the big changes is that you're playing as him. You're not playing as the main Dynasty Warriors characters that you always play as in a lot of the games. And there's other changes in the game, some of the mechanics they introduce. And so this does do something different to the series, and I think it does it in a good way. I think it reinvents the series in a good way, and I do think it works. And to me, this is like the greatest game this generation, easily. I mean, to tell you why that is, let's get into it. So, hack and slash game. Got it for PS5, physical copy. First things first, why do I consider this the best game in the PS5 so far? Best game this whole generation. This is a game that not only I feel like it's worth the money, but I feel like you'll be playing it for a long time. Like I spent almost around 70 to get this game, and I played it from late March, and it took from late March all the way till middle of June to complete the whole game, get all the trophies, do everything, including the expansion pack. And not only is it a good game and reinvents the series, but it has a lot of content, and it feels like there was a lot there, you know? So I feel like it's the best so far in generation because it was a game that didn't get boring after 40 hours, or you did everything in it after 40 hours. And I feel like there was a lot more there. You know, it was one of the first games I played on PS5 where I was playing it for a very long time and had more to do after a month of playing it, and it lasted me a while. And the game itself is just great. It really is. You know, in terms of like performance and graphics, it does look good on PS5. I mostly put it on performance mode because even on PS5 Pro, you know, putting it on there is the best way to get 60 frames and all that stuff. So the overall story of the game is it's a traditional Dynasty Warriors Three Kingdoms storyline. The Yellow Turban Rebellion, the Han Dynasty, you know, Dong Zhuo shit, the Three Kingdoms, Wei versus Wu versus Shu, that whole storyline. Though spoiler alert, it only goes up to Chibi, which did throw me off. But after playing it and thinking about the direction of the series, and hopefully they will do a sequel, then I see why it ended at Chibi. So yeah, that's the story, you know, that, you know, what usually Dynasty Warriors story really is. But what makes this one really cool is that I feel like you get a more in-depth version of the story. Like each part of the chapters you go through, it feels like you spend more time, you know, with the story and the characters. Like one of the things I like about the game is just all like the interactions with all the characters. Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Liu Bei, and Cao Cao, and Zhao Dun, and Zhao Yuan, and, you know, Sun Jian, and Qing Pu, and Han Dong, and Huang Gai, and all the characters that are in here. Getting the interactions back and forth with them, seeing them interact with other characters, the bonds you have with them, the conversations you have with them, doing requests with them, getting to see cutscenes, and getting to see all the interactions with all the characters rather than it just be going from stage to stage to stage. It's nice, you know, it really is cool. It feels like this is the most in-depth Dynasty Warriors story we've had. You know, it isn't just you go from this stage, you get maybe a cutscene, then you move on to the next one. It's like, no, you actually get to spend time with certain characters, you know, like you don't just go from Yellow Turban and then you go straight to the Hulao Gate and then you go straight to Jia Pi. You know, you don't just go straight from them big jumps. You actually get to spend some time, you know, in the Yellow Turban Rebellion talking to some of the characters. Same thing with the Dong Zhuo stuff and other eras. But I really enjoyed the story in this game and how it was told. I liked going through the Three Kingdoms storyline, mixed in with the Guardians of Peace thing, which is the new thing to do with Zuluan, which he's a silent protagonist, which I guess is different for Dynasty Warriors. His design could be a bit more unique because he just looks like any generic anime main character you can think of, to be honest with you. I think they could have had some customization to change how he looked because he, you know, compared to how all the other Dynasty Warriors characters look, maybe they could have did something more with his design. But you play as him. He's a part of this tribe of people called Guardians of Peace. They have a role in the story, trying to keep the peace and stuff like that. And, you know, you eventually find out what happens to him. Spoiler, this review will have spoilers. The clan got wiped out by the Han, and that's why one of the members that does live by Luan, who you see later on, which is weird how he gets older, but yet Luan looks the exact same. That's weird. Like, some characters will get different armor later on, like Liu Bei, Zhang Feng, Guan Yu, but then certain characters will look the same later on. Like, it makes no sense for Zuluan to look the exact same in the flashbacks when Bai Luan's a kid, and then later on Bai Luan's an adult and he still looks the same. That stuff like that's kind of weird, to be honest. But he eventually becomes older. He's like on a path of revenge because what happened to them, and he didn't know Zuluan was alive. Because there's another character named Juha, who she was like also a part of the Guardians of Peace. She knew Zuluan, and she trains him and stuff like that. So you have that storyline in there. You also have this doctor you meet named Yuan Hua, like your person who's like a side character. Didn't mind him. He interacts with the main character and helps you uncover your past. But I enjoyed going through the story, seeing that stuff, but also the Three Kingdoms storyline of, you know, seeing the start of what led to the Yellow Turban Rebellion, why people joined the Yellow Turban Rebellion, why that happened, how Zheng Zhao came to be. You know, and I think this game has the best version of Zheng Zhao easily, because Zheng Zhao in all the other games, let's be honest, he was always just silly and goofy. He really was. In this game, I feel like he's more serious. I feel like he's just a lot more cooler and interesting in my opinion. This is easily, this game, best version of Zheng Zhao, hands down. And I actually felt sad when he died, which is another thing I liked about the game. It actually, you know, it felt sad when he died. And it was cool to see his, you know, him creating the army because of, you know, what the Han Dynasty did and how people were getting hungry and stuff like that. So that stuff is pretty cool as well. And, you know, I enjoy that. And, you know, seeing the introduction of Liu Bei and Shu and Cao Cao and Wei. And there's a lot of big changes here. Like, how this is the first game where Cao Cao, I don't know if you can see it on the back, he does not have his facial hair, which is definitely a lot different. But because he's Cao Cao and he does have a new good voice actor, which is another thing I'll get into, there is some familiar voice actors, I believe, like the guy who voiced Sammy in Dynasty Warriors 8, he still does voices in this game, but for the most part, you got a whole new cast of voice actors. It took me getting some used to some of them. Some of them I'm not too big on, like Zhao Yuan's new voice, I don't like. He sounds too soft. I miss Zhao Yuan's older voice where he sounded more gruff. Not a fan of his new voice actor. But a lot of the other new voices, for the most part, I do like. You know, like Cao Cao's new voice actor is cool. Makes him sound more young, but it does have elements of the older voice actor. Same thing with like Xiahou Dun. Zhang Fei's new voice is cool. He sounds a lot more young. So the new English dub cast, for the most part, I think they do a good job. There's some pronunciations I'm not the biggest fan of. Like, instead of them saying Lu Bu, they say Louis Bu, which to me sounds stupid. Or instead of saying Wu, which is what they're called, they call them Ooh, and I hate that. Like, some of that shit is just annoying, you know? But for the most part, the English dub is solid. So the voice acting in the game is really good. And the way the story is told and how it's in depth, where you interact with characters and you get to talk with a lot of characters and they ain't just going from stage to stage, I do like that a lot. So I enjoyed the story and the way it was told. I like the what ifs you get in there, where you can like save Sun Jian and Sun Ce, or you can save Guo Jia or Dian Wei, or do something different on Cheng Ban. So you get like little altered paths. There's 5 chapters total. You can, you eventually have to choose a force. You can either side with Shu, Wu, or Wei by chapter 3 and go on their own paths. They have their own like stages for the most part, though Wei and Shu are very similar. But they do have a lot of their own stuff, you know, different interactions with characters. You get like different dialogue and stuff. So going through each path is cool, seeing the original ending and the altered ending. So it was cool going through all the paths, you know. So yeah, I enjoyed the story in this game and the way it was told. I think later on in the review I will get to the expansion pack, Visions of the 4 Heroes, and what I thought of that. But the story in the game is great. It's well told, and I enjoyed it. And I can see why it ended at Chibi, because this is, like I said, this is the most in depth they went with a Dynasty Warriors game. So they took time kind of with the story. There's a lot of characters that aren't in here, like Ma Chao and Meng Huo and Zhu. There's a lot of characters that either were introduced yet or just are outright art in the game. Like Lu Bu's daughter from 8's not in here. So there's a lot of characters that didn't make it. But there's a lot in here. I like the character designs for the most part. I think some of them are really cool. So yeah, I enjoyed the story and the way it was told, and going through it was really cool. Seeing certain stages that I don't remember as much in the other games, like when, Taishi C has to ask Liu Bei for help. They team up and they save Kong Rong. I don't remember that being a stage that much, so that was cool. Or like, Cao Cao taking down Yellow Turbans, the remnants, and convincing them to join him. Just there is some cool stuff that I feel like I didn't see as much in their games, or maybe I just don't remember them. You also get stuff with the 10 eunuchs in the game, stuff with them, though it's weird at times. Like, they're called eunuchs, but then there's times where they call them the 10 attendants, which I think sounds stupid. I think eunuch sounds cooler than the 10 attendants. That name to me just sounds lame. Like, it doesn't sound as cool as the 10 eunuchs. I didn't understand that. But there's like this world you go around, this, talk about the gameplay. You have like this world map you go around where you're kind of huge, and there's a lot of places that are smaller, which is kind of strange. You can collect like pyrocene, because when it comes to the gameplay, the game, it's hack and slash gameplay. And the gameplay, like the best way I could think of it is like, you got a bunch of weapons. You can use sword, spear, halberd, crossbow, all kinds of weapons you can get. They can be leveled up. You can get different kind of weapons of that weapon. Some weapons have charge attacks, some don't fully have the traditional charge attacks that you know of. But a lot of weapons have their own abilities. Like, for example, Lu Bu's weapon, there's one where you jump up in the air and jump down on the horse and, shockwave clear a whole crowd, which is pretty cool. A lot of weapons have their own abilities that can be mastered, so that's a cool mechanic. It's different with the gameplay. Best way I could compare it is like God of War 2018, where you have all them abilities with all the weapons. That's pretty much what it's like here. A lot of your weapons have all these abilities tied to them, which is pretty cool. Zuluwan's the main character you'll be playing as. You can get different armor in the game, but it's more just like outfits. It's not like upgrading gear, you unlock new outfits. It's mostly just like you eventually get different outfits, but it's not like, RPG, like nothing like that. There's horses you can get, which you can level up horses, which is pretty cool. I like how I also like how it feels like there's elements from other Dynasty Warriors game in this game. Like, you have the dueling system from other games that does show up in this game, which is really cool. It's cool to see the dueling system back. Taking over bases is a part of the game again, but the gameplay for the game is good. I do enjoy it. It's fun to play. All the weapons you get is nice. Leveling them up, leveling up the character itself, getting them stronger, the horses, the outfits. A lot of that stuff's really cool, and I do enjoy the gameplay of the game. It can be challenging, like, you have rewards, like you have the main stage you can do. There's also some side battles, which are like requests and certain things, like training of Cao Cao's forces or training of Liu Bei's forces, or one of them might be a tournament where you fight officers from a certain kingdom, depending on the faction you side with. And then when you go around the world map, there's like these infinite radiant missions you do where you take out bandits or you take over a base. Those are never ending. You can do those for rewards. Sometimes I do them, sometimes I didn't do them. I wanted to kind of advance the story, but you can do those to get certain things. And then you have challenges in the game, which, where basically when you play the game at ultimate difficulty, you can unlock all kinds of stuff on each stage, which is pretty cool, But I enjoyed the gameplay of the game. It was really fun to play. Enemy officers have like a fortitude system where you can knock down these shields and then get their health knocked down, so that's different. You have Musu attacks, charge attacks. You also have a companion system where you can play as the other Dynasty Warriors characters, but that's one of the critiques I'll get into. You have the companion system in here, but it's kind of not as good as I think it could be. I mean, yeah, there's times where you have a companion. It could be like Huang Gai or Guan Yu or like Zheng Liao, but you have to, when you do have a companion, you gotta wait for the bar to fill up, and then when you wait for the bar to fill up, you switch to them. But you can only play as them for a little bit, and then eventually they use their rage, and you switch back to Zuluan. So you do get to play as the Dynasty Warriors characters. Technically, some of them. There's only like 3 per faction, but it is limited. If they do make a sequel to Origins, I'd like it to just be like Samurai Warriors 4, where you can just switch between the 2 all the time. That's how they should do it. Or they should at least make it longer. I mean, you can get items called Musubans where you can immediately switch to them, but I feel like, you know, they could have did more with that. So that is a little lacking, but that is a cool part. I mean, you can at least play as the character somewhat. So the companion system is flawed, but I do like it. Definitely could use some work. But, you know, I enjoy the gameplay, leveling up the character, you know, going through the story mode was great. The increasing bonds with characters. You also have this, like, it's called Shujing Retreat. This character named Sumu Hui hosts it for a minute, then eventually Peng Tong hosts it, which is pretty cool. It's an interesting way they use this character. He basically, you go there for your bonds, your interactions with characters. There's old coins you can find in the map. You go trade it to him for things. You can trade skill points to him for stuff. You have this world map, like I said. It's where you talk to some of the characters, build bonds. Sometimes you'll go by certain places, like certain kingdoms, and you'll hear like conversations from certain people about, like, you know, oh, Dong Zhuo's gone, who's going to take over now? Or Yuan Shao's dead, or Yuan Shao left to battle to visit his son who is ill. You know, just little things like that are pretty cool. I also like how every single stage you do, any officer that's on the enemy or allied team, you can there's an encyclopedia button, and you can click and read on every single person and things about them. I like that. It's a nice mechanic because I feel like it's cool. It adds more depth to things to kind of read about each character and what they're about. It's pretty cool. So I definitely like that mechanic, you know, it's really cool. But yeah, gameplay in this game is solid. The only thing I would say I would change for a sequel is have it to where we can have the companion system more enhanced, where we can spend more time playing as those characters, because it's too short-lived, to be honest with you. It really is. And some of the characters, you know, they don't have their old weapons still, like Huang Gai. I feel like they've been ruining his character for games. He is cool in the game, but I want his rod back. Like, he has these gauntlets. It's like, man, get rid of the gauntlets, a stupid club, give him his rod and shield back. That's where he was best at. Zhao Yuan's a sword back, which is another critique. Zhao Yuan is the only character in this game who, every time you attack him, he won't shut the fuck up, and it's so annoying. That's one of the weird things about this game that always bothered me when I played it. Every time you fight Zhao Yuan, it doesn't matter what stages, what's going on, every time you fight him and hit him, he always talks, and it's so fucking annoying. He'll say, not done yet, or, you know, whatever else he says. It gets repeated over and over again every time you hit him. It's fucking annoying because no other character does that when you fight him. I don't know why they made his character like that, but it got on my damn nerves. That's something I cannot stand. So that's like one little thing I noticed, that was super annoying. I don't know why they made him like that. It's like, just shut the fuck up, you know? Like, I got on my nerves after a while. Most of the characters don't do that, but for some reason he just won't shut up when you fight him. I don't understand why that is. It's annoying. And then when you kill him, he's like, not done yet. It's like, I fucking killed you. Of course you're done. Like, that shit was irritating. I don't know why that was a thing in this game. It's stupid. But the gameplay is solid. You have difficulties you can do, you know. So gameplay is good, story is good, voice acting is good, graphics wise, visually, it looks great. Music in the game is pretty good. You know, there's a lot of content in the game, leveling up the character, leveling up the weapons, seeing all the paths. You know, you have things you can upgrade, like, you know, some of the items you get, like the attack range and stuff, you can upgrade it with these items called Pyrocene you find around the world. And, you know, you get like letters from certain characters and stuff through certain parts of the story. You also have this war console thing where at the end of certain stages or story mode levels, you have like this war console thing where characters will talk before a battle. Those aren't voiced, unfortunately, but they are kind of cool. A lot of them are pretty much the same, but I don't mind those where you get to see the characters talk before a stage starts. But yeah, I'm trying to think about what else I could say in terms of the game overall. I just really enjoyed going through it. I mean, I got every trophy in it. I platinumed the game. I did absolutely everything in the game, you know. And I really enjoyed going through it. You know, I thought this was a solid game and just the best game on the PS5 so far, best game entire generation. You know, because it's the first game that lasted me the longest. And I played a lot, and I feel like it was just done really well. It reinvented the series in a good way, and it just did a good job with the series. You know, I really feel like it did. Now I'll talk about the expansion pack, Visions of the Four Heroes. Now, the expansion pack's basically kind of similar to the main game, but you get to see the story of Dong Zhuo, Yuan Shao, what's his name, Lu Bu, and Zheng Jiao. You get to join them and see, you know, what would happen if you were to side with them and help them out, because you don't get to see their full story in the main game. Now, I'm mixed on the expansion pack. I don't think it hits quite as well as the main game, and I'll get to why that is. But the expansion pack I do like. It is cool, you know, joining Zheng Jiao, seeing his story, and Dong Zhuo, and Lu Bu, and Yuan Shao. But the reason I don't think it hits as well as the main game, they introduced a new mechanic in the DLC, which is like tactic gameplay, where you kind of move, like it's like you and the allies and enemies are on a map, and then you move towards them, and when you defeat some of them, they're like units you attack. It's like, think of a tactic game, I guess. I don't know. I didn't care much for that mechanic. I don't think it added much to the game. I didn't really like it all that much. It felt like filler. It felt like a way for them to, you know, drag out the DLC campaign a bit. I didn't care for those. I don't know why they couldn't just had more story added in, you know, because I mean, you get some dialogue, but a lot of times it's just battles and tactic type gameplay, and I wasn't that big on it. I thought it was the weakest part of the DLC. I really hope they don't reintroduce that in a sequel. I hope that's not a part of Origins 2, because I'm definitely not going to like it as much. I wasn't super sold on that shit, because you don't get a whole lot of story. It's just maybe some dialogue from a character, and you just go into a stage, taking out this unit and taking out that unit, and you get abilities you use tactic wise. But it's like, I'd rather just get back to the story, seeing the characters talk to each other and doing stages. That's more interesting to me than some tactic gameplay. So that's the weak point of the DLC I'm not a big fan of. Campaigns are the longest, but you do at least get 4. That's where you get a lot of the costumes. Like, you get dream uniforms, where you get one for Shu, Wu Wei, and all that stuff, which is pretty cool, and other costumes. That the DLC also has unlocks you can get through the ultimate difficulty. I enjoyed going through the DLC despite the tactic thing. Going through Zheng Jiao's campaign was pretty cool, helping him out, seeing what would happen if he succeeded. The interactions with him and Zhou Kang and all that stuff was cool. Same thing with Dong Zhuo's campaign. Dong Zhuo's campaign was a lot of fun because he's kind of like a villain. Like Dong Zhuo in Dynasty Wars Origins, I will say, one of my, if not, might be my favorite Dong Zhuo, because he's like a good bad guy, but he's also really tough, and he's all about, you know, he's like a beast basically. Like, instead of a human, he's more like a beast, where it's basically like, you know, victory only goes to the strong and the weak people get defeated, and that's just how it goes, you know. And he just feels more strong and tough, and, you know, even on Hulao Gate, when they approach him, he's like, you better be ready to defeat me if you want to do this, you know. You don't just run away from him right away, or just fleeing him when he gets swarmed, you know. Dong Zhuo just feels more like tough and more of a threat in this game. And that's what made his DLC campaign really cool. Unfortunately, he dies at the end because he gets injured badly, but it still was cool to go through his campaign and interact with him and see the characters like Jai Shu and Lu Bu, and just to help out Dong Zhuo was cool. And he was just a fun character to serve under in his DLC, and he was just a great character in general. I really like his version in the base game. I will talk about that real quick. Dong Zhuo in this game was just really cool. Cool design, a good new voice actor, and might be my favorite version of Dong Zhuo. I don't know, like Dong Zhuo in a lot of the older games is cool, but this one just feels like even more tough, you know, even more like really cool. I just like his whole concept of, you know, the only way you can survive in this world is you're going to be powerful and strong, and if you're weak, then you get defeated, and that's just how it is. I like the simplified nature of how he thinks. It's just interesting, really cool for a bad guy. So that's cool. Going through Yuan Shao's was cool. You get some cool different stuff in there. Like, this was a huge plot twist. I did not see this coming. Spoiler alert. There's this character gets introduced in the DLC. You see him in Zheng Jiao's campaign. He's just called like Mysterious Warrior. He shows up, and his fake name is Fei Wei in Yuan Shao's campaign. At the end of Yuan Shao's DLC campaign, he says he's Huang Zhong. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I mean, he looks really cool. Unfortunately, he has a crossbow. I don't like Huang Zhong with a crossbow. Give him his sword back. But he does look really cool, and I was genuinely shocked because the DLCs are like what ifs, right? And for them to introduce a new character that wasn't in the main game threw me off. I wasn't expecting that, but it was cool to get Huang Zhang in there and something different for him to like to be serving Zheng Zhao's team, or I mean Yuan Shao's team. So that's cool. Lu Bu's campaign was fun to go through as well. You know, going through a lot of battles and seeing his interactions with Chen Gong, Ziluan interacted with him, and you side with Lu Bu. So I did enjoy the DLC campaigns. There are some good changes. Like I like how in the DLC campaigns, you're inside of it and you can see people sitting down and talking and eating, you know, kind of a small change to what the base game was like. I do like that. I think they should keep that for the sequel, where you're actually kind of walking around and you see people standing around. That's a little better, I think, than how the base game was with the world and the way it was. And then you got like these tournaments and all this other stuff you can do for like rewards, which are pretty cool as well. And the stages are more set to what your level is, which makes the DLC a lot more difficult. DLC is really tough, especially Dong Zhuo's finale. Diao Chan and Lu Bu, you gotta fight both of them mostly by yourself. They got so much health, it's ridiculous. Diao Chan almost felt like another Lu Bu I was fighting. It was crazy. So the DLC I thought was half good, but the tactics shit I could do without. I wasn't sold on it. Some other things I could say overall though in Dynasty Warriors Origins, like I enjoyed a lot of the weapons. The sword I enjoyed, the spear, the halberd. You know, most of the weapons I liked. The, you know, Guan Yu's weapon, Zhang Fei's weapon, the spear, the halberd, the, you know, the rope dart DLC weapon is really good. I like that one a lot. I wish you could have gotten the club. I thought it was strange how the club weapon was not a weapon you could get. I feel like that would have been a lot of fun to have. The only weapon I don't really like all that much from the DLC is the arrows. I've never really cared for crossbows or arrows. I've never liked that shit in games, so don't care much for the bow and arrow weapon at all. I've never liked to play that way in games. But I like most of the other weapons. Lu Bu's weapon is insanely overpowered. The abilities you get with it, all the crazy shit, which Lu Bu in this game is very difficult. Like fighting him in this game is very difficult. Once I learned how to fight him, I eventually was able to defeat him easily, but he is very difficult to fight in this game, that's for sure. Like a lot of his abilities look really cool. Go around the horse with this red aura, just knocking everybody out of his way. He can be a companion, which is cool. You can only use him on like, if you go to the stages section or replay stages, which you have a base camp inn, you interact with this guy named the innkeeper. The inns where all your stuff is, story, records, items you upgrade, you know, costumes you can change. That's where everything basically is in the game. But overall, I enjoyed Dynasty Warriors Origins. This was a solid game. And unless Gears of War E-Day changes it, like unless Gears of War E-Day or Dynasty Warriors 3 Remastered surpasses this will remain the best game I played on PS5, the best game I played in 9th generation. Because it reinvents the series in a good way. It's a good game, it tells a good story, it's fun to play, and it kept me busy for more than a month. It was the first PS5 game I played where it lasted for a long time, you know, where I feel like I got my money's worth. And something I will say is it's one of the few Warriors games that doesn't have a lot of bullshit DLC. You know, the only thing it has is that expansion pack from what I know. And I think that's about it. The only weak point in the game, I would say, like, you know, the companion system could be a little better. And, you know, the annoying Zhao Yuan, every time you fight him, he keeps talking. That's stupid. You know, there could be a bit more custom, like, because the main character, he's like a story character, but it's almost like you're being put in there because you can name him. I feel like there could have been more customization with him, or maybe they could have redesigned him, or they could have did something with it, or make it like edit mode, you know. I guess this is the closest to what I always talked about with like Dynasty Warriors 5. I forgot what the mode's called, but you can serve like under all the characters and build your own character up. That's the closest, I guess I would say this is. So, you know, you have the Guardians of Peace storyline intertwined with the Three Kingdoms storyline. There's like choices and stuff like that, but I overall enjoyed this game. You know, if you haven't played this game, if you're a fan of Dynasty Warriors, even remotely like the series, I highly recommend this. You know, definitely the best thing I've played, hands down, this entire console generation. And this game really surprised me because, you know, going into it, I was like, a Dynasty Warriors game, we're not playing as the main characters. I don't see how this is going to be. You know, I wasn't the most excited for it, but this game ended up exceeding expectations of being really good. You know, and I enjoyed the hell out of this game. You know, the gameplay, seeing the way the story was told, interacting with all the characters, the more in-depth storyline. The game looks really good visually, runs really well, has a lot of good color. It can be challenging, there's so much content there. I just overall enjoyed the game, and even though I wasn't big on the tactics stuff, there still was some really cool stuff with the DLC, especially some of the DLC songs in the game as well. So yeah, I think I covered most of everything I could think of talking about. There are some characters that I got to see finally that they were made playable in 9, which I didn't play in other games, but like, you know, certain characters like the other Zhen Yu, it was cool seeing him, or Zhou Kang, or Cheng Pu, you know, certain characters like that that I wasn't as familiar with that carried over from other games I ain't played yet. Those characters were cool, it was cool seeing them. I think for the most part, I'm cool with this new direction of Dynasty Warriors, and I actually would be excited for a sequel to this. Like the remasters are doing, that could be a way for them to give us the old style where you get to play as the characters, then they can give us stuff like this. I really hope they do a sequel. I think they could do a lot of improvements to the sequel, expand the companion system, maybe give us more customization for the main character Zuluan, whoever we're going to be playing as. You know, they could do a whole lot more with the sequel, but overall, I enjoyed this game. Like this is greatness right here, in my opinion. So that's really it, what I got to say in this review. If you've played this game, let me know what you think of it. Like I said, I like this game so much. I got every single trophy. I got like 200 something hours in this game. It almost got to 300, but that's it for this review of this game. Peace out.